Hey there, it's Tom Ryan, founder and CEO of ICR. Before we get into the next episode, I wanted to ask that you subscribe to the show. It'll help us get even more unique and interesting guests on the podcast and in turn continue to educate management teams and the growing ecosystem that creates value for fast-growing private and public companies. And while you're at it, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. Very much appreciated.
Asset intelligence can bring you closer to your goals and achieve more than you could before with lower cost.
When you're running a large industrial operation, tracking all of the assets in your process, knowing where they are, what they're doing in real time can be a huge challenge. That's where .ai comes in.
It's about quality and process improvement. The metrics we deliver and the way that you can look at your process when you have real-time in-process data collection and AI analyzing that for you.
My name is Tom Ryan, and this is Welcome to the Arena, the ICR podcast. Each week, I sit down with today's business leaders to give you an inside scoop on some of America's most prosperous public companies, their origins, their challenges, and the keys to their success. Today, we're sitting down with Ed Nabrotzky, CEO and co-founder of .ai, which trades on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange under the symbol DAIC. Ed has worked in executive leadership roles in multiple large public enterprises, including Molex and Panasonic. He brings over 25 years of experience in technology development. He's listed as an inventor on 5 foundational patents and has experience managing companies across Europe, India, Singapore, and China. And I guess in his spare time, he's a doctoral candidate in technology management, which we'll get into in a moment. Let's enter the arena with Ed Nabrotzky. For those that don't know, maybe tell us what .ai is. What do you all do every day?
We track the dots, just like our name says. We know that there's a big market with asset intelligence. In other words, people have things. And everybody that has things has the same problems. How many things do I have? Where are my things? Are my things doing the right things to produce the result I want? So we're in the business of those things, which we call dots, circulating through enterprises, circulating through recipes, and making sense of it all and making it more efficient, more effective, and more productive in the industry.
And what inspired you to launch the company? What gap did you see in the market that you felt was not being addressed?
There's really 2. The first was just the application of AI. We're seeing AI being applied to lots of different industries, generative AI, things that consumers are touching. But in the industrial sector, AI has really not been adopted very widely yet. And yet it's such a rich field for it.
Yeah.
Supply chains are complex. There's a lot of material, a lot of people, a lot of machinery moving through, and all those factors make it difficult for people to plan and to execute properly. And you look at what we used to do to track things. Big infrastructure projects, antennas, big doorway portals, very expensive handheld scanners for people and interrupting workflows.
Yeah.
We don't need to do that for data collection anymore. There's new ways to collect the data in process. So the combination of the opportunity of AI and the opportunity to revolutionize the way we do in-process data collection is really what drove me to kind of found this company with my partners and move it forward.
And who are your customers, Ed?
Well, right now, our biggest focus is on the manufacturing industrial space, logistics companies, manufacturing companies. We've released a couple of different announcements on customers. You'll see 8Ks from us on one particular partnership. But primarily, these are large manufacturers and large 3PLs that we're working with initially. We have a channel program, and so our channel partners are working across healthcare, entertainment, transportation sectors, utilities. So we have many customers in different sectors, but I guess our primary would be manufacturing and logistics.
Yeah. I'm also a founder of a company almost 30 years ago, and I always like asking this question of founders. Was there a defining early customer win or like an inflection point where you're like, you know what, this is going to work?
Boy, I would point to 2, I guess. The first was when we first started our outbound call campaign and we started going through our marketing qualified leads and seeing what's happening. Like you, Tom, I've done a number of startups. I've never had the uptake that I've seen on this startup.
Really?
Everyone we called had the same problem. Yeah, you're right. I don't have a good intelligence system. Yes, I would love to figure out how to apply AI. I'm getting pressure from the corporate boardroom to figure out how to make this work in our business. So
yeah,
the first place I was so encouraged was seeing that hit rate of the number of meetings we could book, the number of leads we were able to advance, how fast the pipeline was growing was, I'd never seen that before in any of my other companies that I've started and successfully exited from. But then the second was, that first big customer win. We had a big adopting customer that we walked in to solve their problem they've been working on for years. And within a couple of weeks, we had our system set up. And I don't know how you've experienced different demos before, but we actually demonstrated it working reliably after just a very short setup period, as I mentioned, getting it together. And the people that were around us were the people that had been struggling with the problem. They all stood up and clapped. We got a standing ovation.
Wow.
For the data that was coming back. So I guess I'd point to those two as the things that told me we were on the right track.
Yeah, I know something like that as a founder. It's almost forget about like the contract or the value of the contract. It's just so gratifying to be able to go in and solve a problem, and help a company like achieve their goals, don't you think?
Yeah, my undergraduate degree is an engineering degree. And so fundamentally...
You're a problem solver.
Yeah, I love to solve problems. And your problems change as you move in management into solving a lot of people problems and different problems. But yeah, I love solving problems. And the fact that this technology solves a fundamental problem across a very wide set of industries is really gratifying and exciting.
So Ed, why now? Why is asset intelligence becoming front and center? Why is that happening now, in your opinion?
I mean, COVID certainly brought this front and center for us as we saw supply chains breaking down. I would also point to the investment of some of the really big players like the Amazons and the Walmarts who are fully automating and doing predictive analytics on all of their supply chain actions and adding a lot of AI into their system. So for the other large companies and the mid-range companies that have to compete with those big boys, I meet with CIOs who are saying, how do I do this?
Yeah.
I know Amazon's doing it, and that's how I can get a package on the doorstep the next day. How do I do that? And the reality is that they can't spend the billions and billions that some of these companies do for fully automated systems. But there are ways to use IoT and AI to get that kind of efficiency in even a mid-range company, just a few billion-dollar company or hundreds of millions. And so that's what we bring. And I think that's the why. It's partly the environment, as you mentioned, all the reshoring, the post-COVID effect.
Yep.
It's partly the fact that AI has become so pervasive that people want to apply it. And it's also the new IoT data gathering systems. But I think when I talk to executives, a lot of it's because they're looking around and they're reading these articles and they're saying, boy, if Amazon's doing it, I've got to get on this bus too and figure out a way to make it work for my enterprise.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like it's becoming table stakes, number one. But number two, Ed, when you go in to a potential engagement, I have to imagine you're also laying out kind of an ROI argument.
That's right.
Maybe talk about how you approach customers with that.
That's what's kind of neat about this. It's not just a single axis we play on. Certainly when you go to talk about ROI, there's an efficiency aspect to this where they have missed so many shipments or they're behind on their quotas, and you can show how asset intelligence can bring you closer to your goals and achieve more than you could before with lower cost. There's a lot of safety arguments here. When we first started, we were doing a lot of military work and government work. A lot of that was about real assurance and safety being to make sure that your process was absolutely right. You weren't losing things. You didn't have any major issues there. And that sometimes is the primary driving factor.
Yeah.
For others, it's about quality and process improvement. The metrics we deliver and the way that you can look at your process when you have real-time in-process data collection and AI analyzing that for you. Some of them are driven by that continuous improvement. I need to get 10%, 20% every year. This will take me maybe 40% in the first year and then a continuous, 10, 20 going forward. That's sometimes the driving factor. So again, it's gratifying when you have multi-legs to your stool for your value proposition. And we found those, whether it's efficiency, safety, or quality and process improvement, any one of those three resonates very quickly, depending on what the customer is mostly interested in.
Yeah. Ed, walk us through kind of the flagship platform that you have in Smart Tags. What's it called and how does it solve real-world pain points?
Right. And so it's key to remember there's really two sides to this. There's the AI side, which is solving all the process problems. And then there's the in-process data collection. We found very early on, we couldn't run AI if we didn't get real data. And the data collection systems we had to work with were mostly manual barcode scanning or heavy infrastructure stuff. So we had to invent our own data collection system. And we call that ZIM, or Zero Infrastructure Mesh.
Yep.
The ZIM system allows us to very inexpensively tag different items and do RF data collection to see where things are, not with the massive infrastructure of the past, but with very simple mobile data collectors. We know also that RF doesn't solve all problems. And so we also created a vision system overlay. So we use cameras, we identify objects, and we correlate the vision system with the RF tag. By putting those two together, we can solve almost any data collection problem. We correlate that and bring that data up into our cloud software structure so we can tell where assets are, what state they're in, and whether they're going the right direction for the recipe that we're monitoring.
Yeah. And I'm not a technologist, but I can completely appreciate how valuable this is. What I want to understand better, and maybe you can lay it out in layman's terms, is kind of like the predictive analytics.
Sure.
How does the AI work in the process? How does it deliver actionable results or continual improvement? How does that work?
So we use a part of AI which is called supervised learning. And for those that know AI, you'll understand where we're coming from. We're not a generative AI company. We're in this supervised learning mode where we take what we call a recipe, which is an enterprise knows that if they put these kinds of materials and these kinds of manpower and these machinery pieces in to this recipe, that they can transform an asset or change a condition within their enterprise. Let's say I need to make the 4:00 truck with a product. So the recipe to get that part on the 4:00 truck will have time elements to it. It will have inputs into it, like materials or people that have to work on it. And so the AI engine can have rules around that recipe to say, if this step hasn't happened yet, you're in jeopardy of missing the 4:00 truck. Now, rather than just monitor it, we'd like to intervene in that process and say, well, how can I recover and make the 4:00 truck? Well, I can alter my recipe. I can ask a different fork truck to get over here to move some material. I can reassign a picker to do some labor to get some parts available. Whatever the action is, the recipe has to be updated or intervened to make the outcome that has to happen. So when we engage with a company, you start with a very simple machine learning type environment where you set up rules that will emulate that recipe. You attempt to train your engine using that supervised learning approach, which is you have an objective. Let's call it make the 4:00 truck. And you go through a number of different scenarios, many scenarios that show when you didn't make the 4:00 truck, when you are making the 4:00 truck. And you try and teach the learning engine how to intervene to assist in that process.
It's a simple concept. The technology behind it is incredibly advanced, but it's how everyone would approach it if they could wave a magic wand, and you kind of have that magic wand for people.
Remember, it's a wand that's always progressing, though, Tom. I don't want to represent we're all the way there on the journey, but we're doing some really interesting things with early learning models and with our in-process data collection that I think is going to take us to a whole new level of efficiency as we keep working it.
Very cool. When you're dealing with customers, how do you build trust around issues like data security, responsible AI? How do you view all that?
Yeah, the data security is a really big one for us. The responsible AI hasn't been a big barrier so far. And I think that's partly because we're not dealing with personal information or things that are generative where we're doing deep fakes or things like that. It's a little different than consumer AI. But the cybersecurity is a huge piece. We're working through our different compliance aspects of that. Our SOC 2 Type 1 certification that we hold now, and as we move towards SOC Type 2 and ISO 27001, I think that's a big part of it, is proving that you're working through standard compliance procedures, that you're monitoring your process effectively, that you're securing the data effectively, and that you're not so susceptible to cyber attacks. We do penetration tests regularly on our software, and we are very open and transparent with our customers, showing them where we are on the cyber side. So I think that's a critical piece of what we have to continue to invest in, which is the compliance processes for cybersecurity.
Yeah.
On the AI side, we're frankly in a little bit of a watch and wait to see how this industry goes. The regulations have been very vague so far. And certainly in our area, an industrial application like this that's not generative, I think it'll be a while before regulators really start to get a hold of this and start doing anything with responsible AI within this type of a setting.
Greater asset intelligence is something that is of value to companies across any industry. So given the breadth of their potential customer base, I wondered how flexible .ai's platform could be in adapting to their clients' unique needs.
We've started with the philosophy we only want to make one set of software. That software platform should apply to everything because it's applying to general asset intelligence. And the weight then falls on our channel partners to do the adaptations.
Interesting.
So the software has a flexible rules engine that allows the end user to configure it themselves and to put their own rules in and their own conditions, which teaches, of course, the machine learning and the AI side. So that allows a great amount of flexibility. We use an MQTT interface that allows us to interface with other software programs, and we turn those specifications over to our channel partners so that custom programming can be done without us intervening to make that happen. So the combination of the open interfaces and the open rules engine allows us to be highly configurable in any environment. And it's about us getting our channel program up to where we have value-added resellers that can do that custom work for us to adapt us. But we're very committed to our SaaS product remaining a single instance that everybody uses, and they can wrap their own customizations around that.
I have to think that R&D is such a huge part of the business. What areas of innovation are you most excited about when you think about where .ai is allocating capital?
Wow, that's a really good question.
Because you're like a kid in a candy store, Ed. I can tell, like you want to do everything, but the constraints of reality don't allow you to do it, probably.
Exactly. And that's the issue. The number one priority is our AI implementation. So we're putting most of our money into deepening our algorithms, making them more responsive to the conditions that we're seeing as we're expanding our commercial viability, getting more and more customers on board is teaching us, what they need in that AI implementation. So there's no question that's our number one investment place.
Yep.
The second priority is our data collection systems. The AI is only as good as how much data you feed it. And we're constantly trying to figure out how to make our zero infrastructure mesh, our ZIM protocol, and our bridges, our tagging system more capable of giving us better in-process data. So I think those are our two big R&D investments, with AI certainly number one, and then the data collection number two.
And how do you balance kind of pushing the boundaries of AI, so to speak, right, with keeping it simple for customers, keeping it cost effective? How do you balance that?
Yeah, it's all about, and this is a classic engineering problem, it's about reducing it to common use cases. And so we've been exposed to many, many use cases, and we've tried to sift through that and pick the 3 or 4 starting points that we're going to get really, really good at. And I think that's the key to success going forward, is we don't get distracted with the thousands of different variations we could do, but really get rock solid on the first few that are most important.
So I know that you recently announced orders of over $1 million and expanded manufacturing in Puerto Rico. I have to think that's more than just, a positive for your revenue. It's bigger than that. Maybe tell us about the order, anything you're comfortable talking about, and what does that really mean to .ai in the bigger picture?
Yeah, I can certainly speak generally about that. In our previous disclosures to the market, we've talked about some of the pilots that we've done. All of our revenue to date has been small single installations to prove the concept to various customers.
Yep.
The reason we did an 8K on this 1.27 million orders, this is the first real large-scale production order that's kicking off this cycle that we hope to emerge from, of continuous growth and seeing the adoption happen. So it's really significant for us. This first order, while it's not a huge order, it's of a size that really validates that we're out of demo and concept proof mode into commercialization. So that's what it really means. Puerto Rico for us, we researched when we first started looking at this hardware build, and we knew we were doing a lot of fast turns and we would have to have our own manufacturing to kind of make that work. Puerto Rico was wonderfully receptive to us. We have great advantages by manufacturing in Puerto Rico in terms of tax advantages and different subsidies we're able to achieve there, but also advantages in being close to the United States, being part of the United States. So we can do the Made in America stickers and make sure that we're using that in this economy. So, for us, expanding Puerto Rico, getting into production, moving our quality and our volumes up in the hardware side, that inevitably will lead to seeing the enrollment of those devices into our SaaS software product. And you'll start to see the SaaS subscription revenue rise in the coming quarters as those hardware pieces start getting enrolled and we start seeing those monthly charges come from the operation.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So that's what it means to us. And hopefully you'll see a lot more of that. We certainly are working towards several other orders that we hope to be able to announce in the future as well.
Yeah, success leads to success. And I would think that it gives you credibility, with one of the world's largest industrial distributors. And then geographically with Puerto Rico, I have to think, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but maybe a first step in global manufacturing as you kind of lay out the vision for the next decade, Ed?
Absolutely. Yeah. We have to make a lot of devices if our system is going to be the main data collector. So yeah, it will go beyond Puerto Rico. But Puerto Rico is a great starting point for us, and that factory will fuel our growth for some time. The nice thing about our products are they're very, very light. The hardware products are very small, light, easy to ship by air to different places. So it doesn't really matter where we start from. We can supply the world from one spot initially until we start building regional manufacturing capacity.
I know you just went public via a SPAC. And what does being a public company do for .ai?
Well, it gives us access to capital. One of the problems of being a SaaS company, as you know, is that you defer your revenue recognition. You can sign a 3 or a 5 year deal with a customer, and you're amortizing that deal out over those years. And yet you need the cash up front to service the customer, either with hardware or just with services on your MSA. So we felt we needed to go to the public market to have that kind of capital so we could finance the growth and then really take advantage of that SaaS model going forward.
Yeah, and it also probably helps in attracting people. You can compensate them with stock. Everybody feels like they have some skin in the game, which is exciting.
Yes. Well, it sounds like you've managed these businesses, Tom, yourself. So
I've been around a long time.
I can imagine. One of the big constraints in AI is everybody wants AI engineers, AI strategists.
Yeah.
And so we're competing in that market for the best talent we can get. And you're right. That's part of it. Showing that we have liquid compensation, incentive programs
Yep.
really helps us attract the very best. In fact, we're hiring a person now who I don't think we would have had on board if we didn't have that advantage. So
It's actually a big deal. I've been working with companies that have gone public over the last 30 years. What did you personally learn from that process?
all my previous work in this has been with private equity, doing mergers with my previous startups. I'd never done the public route before.
Yeah.
And so I guess academically, you mentioned my PhD I'm trying to complete here now with my doctoral program. I wanted to go through this process for a lot of different reasons, but one was an academic curiosity of what's it like to go through that process. It was much longer than we anticipated. It was much more complicated than that I had anticipated, even though I knew fundamentally what the path looked like and had met with many people and researched the path. When you're actually in it, the amount of work it takes with legal, with accounting, with regulatory requirements, with the different listing people, in this case, NASDAQ, to get our listing completed, we probably spent 6 to 8 months longer than we had hoped we would or that we initially targeted. So my first advice to another CEO trying to do this is really extend your timeline expectations. Make sure you have the runway in cash and in resiliency in your organization to get through the process, because undoubtedly it'll take you longer than you thought. And with longer means also more expensive, the fees. And it was just incredible how much it cost to go through that process. That being said, it was less than an IPO, which is why you do the SPAC. But the second piece of advice I would say is to pick the right SPAC partner. I think we were fortunate to have a really good partner in Shoulder Up who we worked with that did help us through along the way and is still engaging with us now after the go public. Their CEO has been a great mentor for me and a great help as we've been moving new doors. So I think if you have a good SPAC partner and you are realistic about your timeline and your expenditures, I think it can be a really good process. Going back, I would have done some things differently, but in the end, we've come to the result I think we need to get to.
You're learning, like everybody, you learn every day. And I think being a public company, although it can be painful and a double-edged sword at times, on the margin, it's very positive for the reasons that we talked about: credibility, attracting the best people, and capital, and really getting a head start in an industry that, everyone assumes that like the capital spigot is always going to be on. And, I've been around long enough to know that sometimes that just like stops. And when you have a chance to raise capital, you better hit the market. And you guys did, which is a real feather in your cap, I think.
Yeah, it's great that we got to this stage, but you're quite right to identify there's no guarantee here. We went to the capital markets early because we knew we needed to fuel a rocket ship.
Yep.
But that has with it a jeopardy that if you don't post the results and show the growth, then you're right, it can still dry up on us. So we're in a challenging time where we're very early. We're pre-revenue coming to the public markets.
Yep.
We're just starting to show the revenue and the emergence from that pre-revenue cocoon. And we're certainly hoping that our investors, both institutional and public, will hang with us as we build this up and make it go. But that's the challenge, is to help people stay on the wagon while we work our way through the first early stages here.
Yeah, look, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? How about the industry, Ed? Step back for a minute. What are the biggest forces kind of reshaping supply chains and logistics right now? Is it mostly the tariffs?
That has certainly an impact. I'm not sure that would be the biggest issue. I really think the technologies are what's really driving this. And living in Rochester, as I have for the last little while, I have Kodak here in my backyard. It gives a good example of this. The companies that are driving the current technologies in use have been there for 30, 40 years selling the same kind of systems. And there's a challenge for them to adapt to this new world of AI and in-process data collection.
Yeah.
Around here, we call it getting Kodak'd, right?
Right.
You're making so much money. So there are some big dominant firms we compete with that they know and they're investing in this direction, but they're investing very slowly and incrementally to try and take advantage of where they know the market's going. I don't believe they're going to get there fast enough because they have the same Kodak problem. Their current product lines are so profitable and they dominate the industry that they're going to struggle to catch that disruption and be part of that. So I think that the biggest thing shaping it now is that there are these forces of companies knowing they need to change, seeing that the current technology really isn't solving their problem, but they have a long tail on their contracts, on their systems. They've spent 30 years installing heavy infrastructure, and their current incumbent suppliers are keeping them there while they dabble in some of the new startups like us. And we're not the only ones. So this is a classic ferment problem where you've got an industry in ferment with new entrants here trying to realign the technology of the industry. And you've got your large incumbents who are just creeping towards that goal, but are really struggling with the adoption of the new methods. And so during that period of ferment, then you have some winners that emerge. And we hope to be one of those winners that emerges and revolutionizes it. Whether tariffs persist or not, the challenges of asset intelligence will be there, and they need to be solved by technology that's not from the 90s.
Yep.
Technology that's available today.
It's a very important point. Like you say, without the tariffs, it's still inefficient. There's still pain points, and that just has maybe brought it front and center, which is great for .ai. I was going to ask you, Ed, are there some common misconceptions from customers about adopting automated asset tracking, like when they kind of say, like we're okay, we don't need to kind of make a move on this? Is it just the legacy stuff that you talked about mostly, or are there other misconceptions about it?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that they've tried other systems in the past, and that was always a 3-year, $20 million project that had to go through capital approvals. And to think that you can bring in something much simpler that can be adopted much faster is just foreign to them. Even as they've been using an Amazon in their life, they have a perception Amazon's, of course, investing billions and billions to create these fully automated systems. So what surprises them, first off, is when they meet with us and we talk about how easy it is to collect the data and then mount the AI engine over top of it. They're asking, well, where's all the wiring? Where's all the infrastructure? Where's all the...
Yeah, doesn't make sense to them.
That's right. And so you have to go through a period of validating that and showing it can really work. And then it's a mindset change. It's a significant difference in the way you run an adoption project when you use new technology versus, as I mentioned, the 90s for data collection.
When you, we're sitting here in September of 2025, when you look into 2026, what are the 2 or 3 things that you're most fired up about with the company?
Well, I think our land and expand strategy, we have some what I call lighthouse customers already in adoption with us. And I'm excited to see those customers explode out and have multiple sites, tens of or hundreds of sites running our system. Yeah. I'm excited about seeing us grow geographically so that we start having our support in Europe and in Asia and following those customers around the globe. I'm really excited about some of the new things we're doing with vision systems. And I think the advanced things we can do now with AI cameras is going to enhance our offering significantly as well. So I guess those would be high on my list. My favorite thing about working in the company is the people. And so I guess if I could, on a personal note, see some of those people grow and take on greater responsibilities and professionally advance their careers in a way that's exciting, I think that would be a big satisfaction for me too. We've brought a lot of investors with us on this journey. We've brought a lot of employees with us on this journey. 2026 should be a year where they see a lot of that starting to pay off and really start to see the light coming here at the end of the tunnel.
That was Ed Nabrotzky, and his company .ai is at the forefront of asset intelligence using cutting-edge technology. Supply chain efficiency has really come to the forefront for many companies for a variety of reasons, and .ai is in the right place at the right time, executing at a very high level. It really feels like the company has reached an inflection point, and it'll be really exciting to watch things unfold over the next 3 to 5 years. I'm Tom Ryan, and we'll see you next time back in the arena.
References to specific stocks are not intended to be recommendations for specific trading behavior. Comments presented on this podcast are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and do not represent opinions or recommendations on whether to buy, sell, or hold shares of a particular stock. All investors are advised to conduct their own independent research into individual stocks before making a trading decision. In addition, investors are advised that past stock performance is no guarantee of future price performance.